So again, now that we're officially started, I'm going to say it again. So none of this is photography. None of this could be entered in a photography competition or association, even under digital art, because, well, you'll see, none of it is actually originates from your own original imagery. So let me share my screen. Go. Okay. So art in the age of AI, and the other thing is that there are a bunch of these programs and they're getting a lot of attention right now, and there's more, like a new one will come out, every week. I'm just going to talk about Midjourney. They all work approximately the same and differently all at the same time. And we can talk a little bit about that as we get into this. Okay. So one people could say with AI now everyone is an artist, but we've heard that before. All you need is a computer and a screen, but we've heard that before. Now with a camera phone, everyone's a photographer. So you all know that it's not just about taking the photograph, it's about what you do with it, what you think about, what you're trying to say, how you express that. And it's the same thing with this digital AI art. It's not just about, hey, give me a great, piece of art. It's like you really have to think about, what do you want to say and why do you want to say it? Just like it is, every snapshot's not a great photograph. All right, but what can you do with it? So I'm just going to run through a few examples. And this is literally what you see on the bottom, a watercolor sunset. Literally, this is what I told the AI. Said, hey, I want a watercolor sunset. And this was the example that it gave me back. This was its generation. A cute dog running on the beach. And be attentive, because there's a lot of like weird little crud and scruff and bad stuff that the AI does. It's not, perfect. So I asked for a cute dog running on the beach. I got kind of a cartoon version. There's some weird stuff in the ocean. I don't know how to get my pointer to show, so sorry about that. I can't, hold on a second. How come I can't get my pointer at all? First of all, I want to get rid of this altogether. All right, here we go. We're back. But there's some weird crud on it. My cat sleeping on the couch. We got a nice cat, but it's got like funny arms, a weird face, half an eye. What it's really good at are like fantasy stuff. And a lot of people do a lot of fantasy stuff. A gothic warlord holding a sword. So a lot of people, you see a lot of people doing a lot of this kind of stuff. It's also really good at mimicking things that there's a ton of examples of. So the Battle of Normandy on a beach as a black and white photograph in the style of Robert Capa. You know that this photograph or photograph very similar to this is out on the web in a million places. So it does very good at things that it has a lot of examples of photography or images of. All right, but how good is it really? So I'm going to just walk through a few examples. So this is a very famous painting by Rembrandt, Girl with a Pearl Earring. Rembrandt clearly thought of everything he wanted to do, how he posed the woman, what she was wearing, the lighting, her facial expression, the background, the color palette, the lightness, darkness, the contrast, everything. So let's see. So I asked the AI to do a portrait of a woman wearing an ochre colored dress, blue and ochre headscarf, wearing a large pearl earring, Rembrandt lighting, oil color. And with Midjourney, in its standard version 3, you get 4 variations. So these are the 4 variations I got. None of them are very satisfying or, even close to what Rembrandt could paint for us. So I made a little change, portrait of a woman wearing an ochre colored dress, blah, 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 facing to the left, eyes looking forward, light complexion, Rembrandt lighting, oil color. And, you know, I got a little bit more interesting poses, but still nowhere near the subtlety and, you know, artistic expression that Rembrandt did. I added the word young so I could get a younger woman. Again, it's mediocre art in comparison to a Rembrandt. There is a new set of algorithms out that you might hear about called Stable Diffusion. And Midjourney does incorporate Stable Diffusion algorithms. And Stable Diffusion is much, much better at faces, much more subtle. And so these are 4 examples running it in the Stable Diffusion algorithm. The same thing. And the first one actually is quite nice. And I never really got anything quite as nice. But it's still, you don't have control over the head placement and where they're looking. And, it lost the blue part. So you don't have the blue and ochre stuff anymore. And so you have some control, but not complete control. And for me, that's actually the fun part of it, is to explore some artistic expression through the AI instead of, if you're coming to this and you want to control everything about it and think you're going to get what you want, it's not going to happen. You're just going to be frustrated. So it's really about using the AI for expression. So let's see. So my final statement about that is art is creativity plus craft. So the AI definitely takes care of the craft, but you still have to bring some creativity to the game. All right. So well, let me just show you an example, and then we'll get into a little bit more. So this is a Discord window, and I will show you how to get this started. If I can figure out, how do I move this out of the way? Darn. Okay. So this is a Discord window. Maybe we can make it full screen. There we go. This is a Discord window. So when you join Discord, you are going to be here, and there's a whole bunch of different things on the left and the like. And I'm going to show you how to create your own, what's called creating your own server, so that you're in your own space and you can see what you're doing. And I'm just going to show you, but we'll do that in a minute. I'm just going to show you this. I was having some fun with playing with some frogs. So you say, the way you talk to the Midjourney app is you say imagine, and then you tell it what to imagine. So there's a, sort of the canonical example of this is you say imagine a sphere, P-H-E-R-E. And you hit return. Oops, it's going to take a bit. I got to put this on fast. We're going to do this again. Imagine a sphere. And you're going to get sort of a default sphere and some default space of artistic expression that it's going to choose. And it will come up, and it takes a little while for it to calculate. You see it's at 6%, and it will come up, and it will show you it coming up. So here we're definitely getting a sphere, but I haven't given it any other information as to what I want from the sphere. So it's just choosing something at random, essentially. So you can say, imagine a red sphere. It's still not completely rendered, but it will continue to get more detail. And we're definitely have a sphere, but it's choosing all kinds of random stuff to put around it, its color and things like that. And then ultimately you get these 4 examples, and you can upscale them. You can make them to their, because they're not fully rendered. You can upscale them by clicking on, so you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can click on 1, 2, 3, or 4 and upscale it. Let's, and let's upscale 3 here. 1, 2, 3. So you click there, you upscale. You can ask for variations. That's variation on number 1, on number 2, on number 3, and number 4. And I'll show you how that works. Or you can rerun the whole thing. But let's just continue. I want to just show you a few more examples of how this works. So here it's upscaling this, and as it upscales it, you'll see that there's a lot more detail in it. So I asked for a red sphere. So let's try and control it a little more. So imagine a red sphere floating in a dense forest. So I'm trying to control, what the sphere is, where it's going to be. And so the first thing is, I'm not running this on my computer. I'm running it on a large set of computing resources, owned by Midjourney. And essentially there's a subscription here, and what you're paying for is the computing time. If I were trying to run this on my own Mac, even though I have a fairly substantial, it would take quite a bit longer than what you're seeing here. All right, so here we have a red sphere. It's coming up. So I created variations of, what did I create variations of? It told me I created variations. Well, I'll find out. That's interesting. I didn't ask for any variations, but it gave me some. Nevertheless, here's some more variations. Here's what I upscaled, and you can see it added a whole lot more. We can actually open the original. They're not very big. They're about 2 megapixels, maybe a little bit more. And if we have time, I can go through, like, what do I do from here? But you can see it added a bunch of interesting, texture and details and the like. Let's go back here. And then you just click outside. So here's my red sphere floating in a dense forest. And you get, 4 different kinds of versions of that. So you get the idea of what's happening here. So it's you telling the AI, the artificial intelligence engine, what you want, and it's going to try and create something based on what you gave it, using information that it's gathered by millions of different labeled images that are mostly, I would guess, in the public domain. So its only idea of what a forest is, or a dense forest is based on what is out there in the public domain. Like if you did a Google search and said, oh, how do I get out of this being full screen? Hold on. We're gonna get there. Oh, I know how to do this. There we go. So if you were to do like a Google search on, dense forest, I spelled it wrong, images, right? You get a bunch of images of a dense forest. And this is essentially what the AI has been trained on. So, and you get everything from, stuff like this, like illustrations, to actual dense forests, overview shots, everything. So the AI only knows what it's been trained on. So how does that work? So let me show you. I'm going to explain a little tiny bit of computer science to you. If I can find that screen. We will find the screen. Oh, there we go. It's close. Okay. So, so the way the AI generation works is based on neural networks. And you may have heard that word, and if you're scientifically inclined, you can read up about them. But basically, there's 3 of them, in fact. The first thing it has to do is understand the language you told it. So there's a natural language processing that understands, sphere in a dense forest. You have to understand that in a is a prepositional phrase, and it means you want the sphere related to the dense forest. It's been so long. I mean, if you have little children or grandchildren, right, you see them learning language, but you have to train a neural network to understand natural language. So that's the first thing that's happening. And that's pretty decent technology at this point. I mean, we do it, Siri, hey, open my calendar. We use it that way. We use it, Google searches are based on natural language processing engines these days. But that's the first thing it does. Then the next thing that happens is there's 2 other components. There's a generator and a discriminator. And the generator generates images, and the discriminator tells the generator whether or not that image matches the description. So the neural net, trained by millions of instances of words and sentences to understand natural language. The discriminator is another neural net trained by millions of labeled images, like I showed you. If you did a Google search on forest, dense forest, like what it would see. And the generator is a neural network that learns by sending images to the discriminator and getting back feedback. So it sends an image over to the discriminator, it gets back a grade, and it says, oh, I guess that wasn't right. And it tries something else, and that's how it learns. So neural networks are all trained in some way, and that training either happens, by humans sending in labeled things, or by testing their knowledge against something else that can tell them how well it's done. So I know that probably went over a lot of people's heads, but let's just walk through it. So a Leonardo da Vinci sketch of a brain made of gears and computer chips. I want it as a sketch. I want to give it, and I'll talk to this, I'm giving it an aspect ratio of 2:3. It goes to the natural language parsing engine that goes into this thing called a GAN, which is the generator talking to the discriminator. The generator creates a random noise image and sends that to the discriminator, and the discriminator knows how to understand random noise images and tells the generator, gives the generator some information as to how to make it more like the description. So it grades the image, and then the generator refines the image. So you saw those images of spheres kind of growing and creating more definition, and it loops it around again, and it loops it around again. And it does this many times, probably 30 or 40 times. And ultimately you could end up with this image. Clear as mud?
Oh, it's fascinating.
So now you know why you can't say any of this is your original art. So that's how these AI, that's how this kind of art generation works. Text generation works the same way, only with words. There's music generation engines that work the same way, but with music. So you can say, I want a piece in, with 2 themes in the style of Mozart, kinds of stuff. So that's how they work. So how well does it work? Well, you saw my example with Rembrandt, but let me just show you some of the sort of pitfalls and things. So I did a whole series of examples, a woman standing next to a tree holding an apple. And literally that's what I gave the engine. And these are the 4 images I got back. Now, the question is, well, why did it make so many mistakes? Like there's no woman holding an apple next to a tree. There's trees, there's women's, their apple. But if you think about the English language, it's very ambiguous, and we do a lot of processing to understand what it really means. So there's actually two other versions in Midjourney that you can use. So there's version 3. So you see this little V3. There's a parameter called test P, which stands for test photojournalistic. That gave me that example. And there's just test, which is more creative. And it gave me that example. So, but what you have to understand is how is it parsing that sentence? So when I say a woman standing next to a tree holding an apple, who's holding the apple? The woman or the tree? What kind of a tree is it? Is it a specific tree or not? And what kind of an apple? So the more specifics you give it, the closer it's going to be able to well understand what you're talking about. So I'm going to try it again. I tried it again with better phrasing. A woman, instead of a woman standing next to a tree holding an apple, which is the top 4, I tried a woman standing next to an apple tree holding a red apple. And you see, at least I got one, the one on the upper left. And then I tried a woman holding a red apple standing next to an apple tree. And that really didn't seem to create any difference in how the natural language processing, how it understood my sentence. So, but those are the kinds of things, if you're not getting what you want, those are the kinds of things to try. Well, how can I rephrase it? Can I add some commas to make it clearer? Like who's holding the apple, what kind of a tree it is? Can I give it some better guidance? So I'm going to took this one and I upscaled it, which is what I just showed you with the sphere. And it adds a lot more detail to it. And there are different upscaling algorithms that you can actually try and use. And some add more detail, some add less detail. But also, if you don't give it a style or a medium with which to render your image, it's going to render it most typically kind of in this blotchy oil color sort of approach. Here's one using an upscaling algorithm they call their beta upscaler. And you see it's quite a different look. Here's one based on their stable diffusion upscaler, and it will take it in it will take the basic bones of the image, but it will almost completely re-render each component of it using a much more realistic engine called Stable Diffusion. So it's very interesting. So I took the same image that you see in the upper right, and I just said upscale it in these 3 different ways, and I got those 3 very different looking images. So that's something that you get to control and you get to play with and you get to, experiment with. So I talked about making variations. So you get something like this and you say, well, I like it, but I want a little more variation. So you can ask for variations, and it gave me those 4 variations. And you see, it keeps the same basic organization of the image of the woman with the apple, but it'll change the tree, it'll change her hat, it will change her expression, it will change the way she's looking. And then you can choose to upscale a different one. So I choose one of them, and some people refer to this as cooking the image. The other thing that happens as you make variations is it adds more and more detail, which sometimes takes you over the edge and sometimes takes you into new spaces that are very, very intriguing. And it's just a matter of using your own judgment and aesthetics. So here I made some variations of this, and those are the 4 variations I got. I took that one, I said, upscale that, and I made variations of that. And now you see she's looking to the left. It's changing the tree and all like that. So So this is where you bring your own artistic aesthetic and your own artistic judgment to the party. All right. Questions about that? Is that clear? And we'll see more of that in action. The next thing to sort of, so there are a million styles that it understands. I don't know, million, but there are many, many styles and many combinations that you can use, all these combinations. And here's a link, and I'll write this, I'll put the sort of more informational parts probably in another post on Facebook for you guys. But this link, and I think I have it open right here. Oh, no, not there. Here we go. Takes you to this page. And this person, Will W. Wolfkin, whoever he is, he spent a lot of time putting together a comparison of a lot of different things. So you can go to this page and and you can look at the themes, for example. And he's taken the sphere example that I showed you, and he's done it across a whole bunch of different themes what he's calling themes. And it's not, I'm guessing, that the AI engine explicitly was trained with these themes, but it's more like these themes emerged out of how the images were tagged. So so you try your own. So he shows, this is all, imagine a sphere with realistic, hyper-realistic, photorealistic, realism, magic, fantasy realism. And you can see, get very different things: classical realism, surrealism, nonfiction, fiction, science fiction, imaginative. And you can see fever dream, right? You get some weird core, worldly. So go to this site, abstract, abstraction, lyric abstract. I actually use these quite a bit for some of the stuff I do. Illusion impossible. So that's just a set of themes. And these you can all add to the prompt, retro wave, nostalgia, etc. And, it's just as simple as saying, imagine a sphere. Well, let's do a red sphere floating in a dense forest. I'll spell it right this time. Abstract. Or, whoops, misspelled floating. Let's see what it does. It's sometimes very good. In the style of a Leonardo da Vinci sketch. And who knows what it will do, right? So you as an artist can just create these, like Leonardo da Vinci would have never done a sketch of a red sphere floating in a dense forest. Like, he would do sketches of mechanical objects and things. But you now as an artist and with the AI can mix and match these things in any way you want and any way you think about exploring your ideas. So, and you can get to some very interesting things. So so I think there's a ton of creativity that the artist brings to this, even though they're not bringing the craft of actually drawing it themselves. Like, look at this one. I'm going to up res number 2, because what it did is put the Leonardo da Vinci sketch inside the sphere. That's kind of interesting. You know, here's the abstract sphere and things like that. So you get the idea. So I'm going to show you a bunch of examples that I pre-ran, because that's easier than running them. So I just used this, a woman standing next to an apple tree holding a red apple. And it's amazing how far you can go without changing your prompt at all. So here's realistic. So this was a woman standing next to an apple tree holding a red apple, comma, realistic. Fantastic realism. Contemporary realism. So look at this. I like the number 1 on that one a lot. Unrealistic. Look at the number 2. When I say number 2, you just count from left to right, top to bottom. Imaginative. Whimsical illustration. Steampunk, for all you steampunk fans. Modern. Retrofuturism. Look at number 1 on that one.
Yeah.
Abstract. Lyric abstraction. Anthropomorphic, so it starts to make everything, you know, with eyes and stuff. Kind of interesting. Let's see. Water, and then you can play with mediums and you can mix these. So you could have done abstract watercolor, you know, futurism, calligraphy, but I just did them straight out. A watercolor, calligraphy, ink. I like to use the ink a lot. You get some and you'll find as you go into these different spaces of mediums that you get very different interpretations of the image itself as well, which I find interesting. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it's interesting. Neon, drawn by a 3-year-old. In crayon, drawn by a 3-year-old.
Wow.
Here we go, Leonardo da Vinci sketchbook, right? And you can think about it, like there's a million images of Leonardo da Vinci sketches that are available. So you know it's got a really good model of what those look like. And then, you know, what makes it most interesting is when you start to add more guidance. So woman standing next to an apple tree, holding a red apple, rural, midnight by moonlight. And I really didn't have to find a whole lot. You know, I really liked number 3 here. But you see, you know, I have like trees in the shape of an apple. I have all kinds of interesting things. Beautiful moon, right? And then I re-rolled it a couple times. I did some variations on it and ended up with this image. And I usually bring them into Lightroom and Photoshop, and I lighten them up a little bit. Sometimes they're a little dense and a little too cyan or too yellow, and so I'll change the white balance on them. Just all the sort of common things we do. And as photographers, you now have this image. You can upscale it in Photoshop or Gigapixel or Lightroom's Enhance, which seems to be pretty good, to give you, you know, a bigger image to work with if you want to print it a little bit larger and put it on your wall and the like. So once you get the image, all that stuff's available to you.
Nancy, what is the format of the image?
It comes out as a PNG, which is just, you know, it's like a JPEG, only it's I think it's a less lossy. It's just a different format. But Lightroom understands PNGs, Photoshop understands PNGs, any graphics, any photo editing software will understand a .png. All right, let's see. So the other thing you can do is, like you saw a little bit this with the Leonardo da Vinci sketchbook, you can use an image or the style of an artist as part of the prompt to move it into a stylistic direction. So there's a lot of, again, if you use an artist that's well known like Marc Chagall, if you find an image and you get the URL of the image page, you can put it as the first parameter to the prompt. And then you can change what's called the image weight. And I'll show you that. I can show you that in exactly as a parameter, and experiment with numbers to get very different renderings. So there was the image I used. So all I did was use this image and I said, woman with flowing hair, apple orchard in the style of Marc Chagall. And when I just said that, this is what I got. When I started to say the image weight should be higher, so I gave it an image weight of 1, I got to there. When I said an image weight of 2, I got those 4 examples. And when I said an image weight of 10, I got those examples. Now, what I found is that different images, I haven't found like an easy medium, like, oh, I always use image weight of 2. Different images seem to have different impact on the final result. And so I experiment a lot with the image weights. Some images, like you keep moving up the image weight, it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of impact. Other images impact it very quickly. So again, this is what you bring as an artist to the show. And I chose a different one, different reference image, apple flowing, apple orchard, image weight of 1, gave it the AR's aspect ratio. And I got I find this very aesthetically pleasing image. I was playing with apples because it was the Jewish New Year and you traditionally eat apples and honey to celebrate a sweet new year. So anyway, so that's where I was on the apple kick. Let's see what else. So let me show you a little bit more. We're going to go down a rabbit hole. This was generated in Midjourney with a woman falling down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to show you a little bit from the start, how this all works. So let's go into, so this again, as I said, is the Discord server. And when you first enter Midjourney, you're going to enter here. And there are all these different threads. And when you enter and you haven't paid any money yet, you go to one of these newbies and there'll be a couple of them. And you don't have to worry about whether it says 50 or 20 or 80. And you can come here and you can, start to experiment, imagine a sphere. Okay, but your stuff's going to get completely interleaved with everybody else using this. So here's somebody else did a beautiful female in a revealing crop top, fighting pose, Eberron setting fantasy covert art, right? And then they did it in this dash test is that stable diffusion algorithm. It's a different algorithm I mentioned. And then okay. So, and the good thing about these threads is you can actually see what other people have done and the prompts that they've used to get there. So it's a very good learning place. An elephant playing a piano. So kind of interesting. Here she's been, several different elephants playing the piano. But what I recommend, if you decide you're going to go head first into this, I recommend, so there are two different subscriptions. There's a $10 subscription, $10 a month, and $30 a month. And for $10 a month, you can do, I think, 250 images or something like that, which you'll eat up in no time. Trust me. For $30 a month, you get unlimited images, and you get this mode called relax mode. I don't want to go into that. There's lots of documentation on it, but you can see in this thing, you get everybody else's stuff, and then you got to go try and find what you did and where it is. I think this was mine, iNancy Images. So what I would recommend, so you come over here and you'll only have this one thing, and you click this plus. This is called adding a server. You click a plus and you say create my own server, and you say for me and my friends, and you give it a name. This is the TOPG demo server. I'm just going to call it. Can have it, and you create your server, and now you'll end up in your very own window. But the Midjourney bot is what it's called, isn't here yet. So if I say imagine, it's not going to know what the heck I'm talking about. So you have to invite the Midjourney bot to your Discord server. So you go back to here, and if you look on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see the Midjourney bot in this list somewhere. It's typically like right around the middle, and you click on the Midjourney bot and you say add to server, and down here you select the server you just created, right? And you say continue, and yeah, just keep everything checked, and you say authorize, and you have to go through I am a human, and you have to play the game. Click each image, gonna plant hanging from the ceiling. They're getting harder, right? Can I even pass the test? I think that's the right set. Okay, some more. Right. All right. Very good. It's authorized. And now when I go to give this TOPG demo server, I can talk to the imagine a group of photographers on the streets of Los Angeles taking pictures. And I want this to be in the style of Steve McCurry. Let's see if it knows anything about. Probably enough Steve McCurry images out there. I hope I spelled that right. And so you have your own server, and it's only and you won't see all the other stuff. So somebody asked me, forget who it was. Terry, I think you asked, how do I even get started? So does that answer your question?
Yes, kind of.
Right. So
it's really complicated, to be honest with you.
It is kind of complicated, but the first time you opened up Lightroom or Photoshop, you probably were overwhelmed as well.
Yes.
Hey, Nancy?
So,
yes.
I'm seeing a prompt at the top that says to get better performance, get the desktop app. Is that what you're using? Or are you just in a web browser?
I am
Sure.
using the desktop app. So I did download the desktop app. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
And that's the Discord?
That's the Discord
Or
desktop
app.
app. Exactly. Yeah.
Right, it's probably what I did then. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. When you get like the woman by the apple tree and one of her eyes was all messed up, can you fix that? Or can you only get what they give you?
You can only get what they give you. So what you can do is you can say, oh, I don't like any of these, and you can re-roll it. This is called re-rolling it. You can ask for it again. And you know, it's not very good at faces, but the let me upload upscale number 4 here.
Then you have the image that you can edit in Photoshop.
You can edit in Photoshop, and there are these programs out there, GPFAN, I think it's called, that are face fixing photos, algorithms that are really amazing, in terms of sending in one of these faces and getting it fixes. And then there are the neural filters in Photoshop itself, where you can add smiles. You can take an eye, cut it out, invert it, put it on the other eye if you got one good eye and one other eye, or you got 2 eyes that didn't match. So this is what people do. In fact, this is what people do.
Nancy,
Yeah.
to create your own server, you have to buy a subscription, right?
Probably, although I don't know.
Yes, I
Because
think-
no, I don't think so, because it's actually part of Discord.
So what would you use this for? You can't use it as your own artwork, and it's not your photography. So what's the purpose? Even though I've seen yours and Kathy's were beautiful, and I'm very interested, but what can you do with them?
Well, so you can use it as your own artwork. I mean, you can sell it as your own artwork. You can't copyright it per se, although that's probably something that will change over time as people figure out what to do with it. But there's nothing that keeps you from generating images and selling them and printing them, and even selling them as, you have a one-of-a-kind, you know, piece of art from me, and I'm going to charge you a premium for that.
Mhm.
There's nobody that can sue you for that. In fact, it's probably a lot safer than taking pictures of strangers. And
But
Um,
if I said, okay, a woman under an apple tree holding an apple, wouldn't I get the exact same image you got?
no, not at all. So imagine, in fact, it's impossible even for me to get back what I got, you know.
Oh,
A
so you get
woman-
different images every time.
Yep.
Okay.
What was my exact, let me go back to the exact phrase I used.
And then Nancy, can you use members of the community, their images?
So you can, let me show you how that, so you can use it to guide a style, but
Mhm.
it won't imitate that image directly. So I'll show you, we can do that. So let's paste this in. Oops, I lost. Hold on. Imagine. And then you ask for the prompt. So let's do this. In fact, I'm going to do it twice. So exactly the same twice. And you're going to see I'm going to have 4 completely different, you know, or fairly different images. What I was going to show you about this is I've done a lot of things where I've used Los Angeles in my prompt. It understands Los Angeles as having palm trees. Every image comes out with palm trees in it. It's very funny, right? So there must be a lot of images of Los Angeles with palm trees. It clearly understands Steve McCurry's images as always having this sort of, you know, warm color tone to it. Kind of interesting. Look at this. I like these silhouettes. It's kind of interesting. So, you know, you can take any of these images and you can upscale them. You can take any of these images like number 2 here, and you can say, I want more variations of them. So here's my woman under, you know, so I did it twice, exactly same prompt, 8 different images. So me as an artist, my art aesthetic would look at this one. This number 4 here. I'm gonna upscale it. This is something that I'm like, this is fascinating to me. And I kind of like number 2 as well. Those two are super fascinating to me.
So what happens? Do you have to save the images that you
Ah.
like?
Yeah. So there is actually a website, a Midjourney website. Yeah, let's just do this. There's actually a Midjourney website. Well, we can go there. This is so much easier than in Zoom, by the way. This would be a really pain in the ass to be doing this. Okay, so there's midjourney.com/app, and I've already logged in and it remembers me, and it will show you everything you've done back through time. Okay, I was playing with stained glass window. I was playing with, a parrot in a tree as a stained glass window. My sister-in-law bought a house that she's renovating up in upstate New York, and she wants some art for her walls. And one of the things we were talking about is sort of a stained glass window look with a parrot. So, what can I do with that? And, I did some experiments that were just awful. Right?
Mhm.
Well, what was I thinking?
So does it save everything that you do to your website, to the website? Or
Yeah,
do you have
so
to save it on there? Or
every-
does it do
everything you do will be in this website. But what you want to do is, and you can do it from here, or you can do it directly from Discord, and I'll show you how I do it from Discord. So I was playing with frogs as well. And see, this is everything I did, tonight. You see everything I did. So what you do in Discord is, let's just make this bigger, is you take something like this and you click on it, and then you say open original, and it'll open the original in a web browser. And you see this is it's a PNG, and you just do save image as. I right clicked and did save image as. Probably it's similar to that on a PC. I'm on a Mac. And you comes up with this sort of finder, like, I'm just gonna go to a different, I'm gonna create a new folder, call it TOPG meeting. And I save it, and now it's saved. And now I can go into Lightroom, for example. And this was a bunch of other stuff that I did. I'm just going to, I have a whole Midjourney folder here. Whoops. And I'm just going to, in this case, I just synchronize with my Midjourney stuff. This won't take but a second. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I saved earlier, and I just import it. So you import it as you would normally import anything. It's just, I use synchronize for this because I just save it. I don't want to copy it over. I don't have multiple. And let's see, that was I should have that new folder. So there it is. And now I can do like typically what I've been doing to a lot of these is, so the first thing I do, if you're a Lightroom user, there's a fairly new feature called Enhance. And really all this is, I believe that if you just do canvas size and you double it with one of the right algorithms in Photoshop, I think it's the same or pretty darn close. If you have gigapixel, that's probably the best enlarging. So, because if you look at this, it's only 1536 by, 1024, just a little over 2 megapixels. So if I do enhance, it creates for me a bigger image, and it does a really nice job. So now it's, 3000 by 2000. So it's still only 5 megapixels. But for what I've been doing, it's been fine. If you want to really, print these large, I mean, this will print, 12 by, what would it be? 8 by 12 easily. It'll probably print larger than that. 150 pixels per inch is probably good enough to get a really, even to get a solid print. But anyway, so you can play with whatever program you have for up-resing it. And you can do everything you can do here. So like they always come out with this too cyan of a look for myself. Like I usually adjust the white balance a little bit. So this was it before. Now it's it's a little bit, to me, a little bit more pleasing white balance. If like you really don't like it, you can go into your hue saturation, and maybe I don't want these cyans so much. Like you'll find there's a lot of cyans in these. So you can, adjust the hue of any one particular color, just, in Lightroom like you would normally. The other thing I do in Lightroom very often is they always come out pretty gunked up in the blacks. If we brought a photograph in like this, your blacks are too heavy. So I almost always push the blacks way up. I'm just doing that with the black slider. You might want to push the shadows up. Now I want a little more contrast in the highlights, and, maybe a little, local contrast. And so here was before and here it is after. So again, now it's, it's your artistic expression being brought in, and whatever you want to do in Photoshop, whatever you want to do in Lightroom, whatever other photo editing process you have, sharpening, detail. Sometimes they come up with too much detail, and I'll dial back the dehaze. I'll undehaze it and, make it a little more subtle. Whatever you want to do. But this is a pretty cool, in my opinion, this is a pretty cool image.
Mhm.
And we can go back to Midjourney, and this is also, I think, a pretty cool image, and we can make variations of these. So the sort of art of this that I end up exploring is making variations of something I find interesting, making variations of it, and keep exploring where does it push it. And so those are variations. So here you get some, things growing out of the apple, and I find it's really interesting to keep pushing the same image over and over. And every time you hit, like even this re-roll, it adds more detail, and it's going to take it into different places eventually. So here, this first one, interestingly enough, I lost the face, right? It brought, it made it much more subtle, and I lost the face, a lot of the face that was in here, which was the coolest part. So, I might try to say, oh, I want to make those variations again, and maybe it will keep the face. The other thing I can do is I can copy this image link. And remember I said, you can use an image to kind of guide it. Oh, see, look, I re-rolled it again. Now I'm going to get the face in one of them. And you can say, imagine, and you can put that image link as the first thing to your prompt, and say I want, a man standing next to a fir tree. And let me give it a pretty hot, let me start with like an image weight of 5. And so it should give me an image in the same style, but it's going to change the subject. And the other day I was fooling around with my frogs. Even before these frogs, I was fooling around. Oh, where did I put them? Oh, they're here. That's I said, I was like, well, I better have it, I want to like really show the club some stuff about this. So I created this story using an AI text generator. And I can show you that. It's kind of fun. So this is an AI text generator. And I said, write a short story. It's raining. Is it raining where you guys are living? I thought I saw lightning and it's,
Yeah,
I'm in the
And
middle
it's
of Thousand
raining.
Oaks and it's raining.
yeah. It's weird weather, eh? Write a short story about the day in the life of a frog.
Are you
Right?
sure it's not computer generated, Ray?
Yeah, I'm sure. So this is exactly the same kind of thing as I think if I submit again, this is the same thing as the image creation, only I'm creating text. So it's got that, it tries to understand what I'm telling it. It's got a discriminator and it's got a generator and it writes text. So the frog hopped out of his lily pad and onto the cool water. He swam around for a bit before he saw a fly buzzing by, right? It wrote me this little thing. The story I wrote the other day is, I could show you a gazillion examples here. Is the frog wakes up early in the morning before the sun is up. He croaks softly to himself as he stretches his long body and prepares for the day ahead. Right? I think I posted this on the Facebook page. So an AI generator wrote this little short story for me. And then I said, okay, well, let me see if I can create some images that would go along with that. And I started out, let me roll to the top here. This was something else. I decided I wanted to do it like in a black and white anime cartoon drawing. Anime is a cartoon, drawing. So I started out with a frog waking up at the edge of a pond, early morning, stretching, sunrise, lily pads, anime line drawing, black and white. And I got these 4 and I decided to sort of key off of this one, number 4, which is this one. And then I took this image and I used it as the prompt for all the rest of the images I created, because I didn't want it to go off like when I didn't do that. It starts to go off in different styles, starts to add color, even though I told it black and white. So I started just using that image as the style, it's like a grounding style for all the other images I did. And so a pond with lilies and many flying insects, because I wanted to get the flying insects coming in. A frog catching a fly. And it took me a few reruns to sort of get to what I wanted. That was an interesting one. I think I finally ended up with something a little different. Here's the rain coming down, right? Pouring rain falling on a pond with lily pads, thunder and lightning, anime, But I always started with the same base image. So that's something to try a lot of. So think this was the one I ended up using. So let's go back to, I just did this. So I changed it, right? A man standing next to a fir tree, but I used this image as the base. So it sort of kept me in the style. Now I'm still I still have a woman. I don't have a man. So maybe my image weight was a little too high. So, this is where you just work with it and you can rerun it. Here I reran it and I've got another one with the face actually much clearer now. So that's the way it works. Questions? So you can see how it's, it's a very creative, it's a platform just to explore your own creativity. That's the way I think about it.
It's fascinating.
With all the AI coming into Photoshop, everybody's getting all up in a tizzy about all this. But it's, AI is going to be incorporated in everything, I think, before too long. Interestingly enough, you talk about not being able to enter any competition with anything other than your own images. PPA, Professional Photographers of America in California, actually have a section that is called electronic imaging. And none of the work has to be of your own making.
Oh, cool.
Well,
So there you go.
Yeah, but the difference is between this and that. I mean, you should have heard all the people who got upset. I was with a bunch of the judges. I'm a certified judge for PPC, and there was a lot of consternation at first. The difference is that in that section, and what it was designed for, by the way, are people that are photographers that are in advertising, that do graphic arts, that do layouts,
yeah.
magazines, and that type of thing. So the difference is that in judging it, we're expected to, part of the judging is based on what we call the guide images. So the person is expected to present the guide images that went into making up the final image. So you're judging the final image, but a heavy weighting is on the process and what the person did with those guide images to get to that final image. So in a sense,
Yeah.
the person is the AI here. It's and that's
Or
but
just
then,
the eye.
taking it kind of a step further is I can imagine where some of these people that compete there might use this to generate some of the guide images that then they later composite.
Exactly. And I was going to bring that up. A lot of people use it. So like you can go in and here, I'll create something. I'll share something again. I'll share again here, share my screen. You can if you go, and do a search, for stuff, you're going to find a gazillion YouTube stuff. So what a lot of people do is they'll say, imagine, a furry sea creature on a white background, right? I'm just going to leave it pretty simple. Actually, I should have done it one by one. By the way, the default aspect ratio is 1:1. So read up on the documentation, how you can set your parameters, and things like that. But so they'll do stuff like this, and they'll do, imagine a young, a young, handsome woman, with red hair. you know, on a white background. Or, you know, they probably wouldn't do that, you know, with red hair, as a superhero, right? So they'll create a bunch of components for their art. And, you know, they'll continue to refine it. You know, they might take one of these, like this black guy, you know, and refine it and make variations, and then create their own different versions of it and take it into other programs that do like 3D renderings of it and things like that. And they'll create characters for their story, and then put it, you know, imagine the city of Gotham, right? On a dark and stormy night, right? And then they'll get all their pieces together, and then they'll make their composite piece of artwork. And that's exactly what they'll do with it. I've seen a lot where photographers have taken portraits of people and composited onto more surreal backgrounds.
Yeah.
You know, and fixed the lighting, you know, created the background, and then taken a portrait of somebody matching the lighting of what the AI gave them, and composite their face into, you know, some Medusa headdress or something like that. Yeah, I can't do that. I don't know how, you know, I'm not good at that, but I'm more like, I'm going to follow this whimsy sort of theme, and everybody's got their own style, right? And their own way that they're going to think through it.